The Unilever CEO goes on to say that he thinks ESG metrics should be global and mandatory.
And the final point is, once you have a plan, we need metrics, because at the moment we're consistently reporting financial metrics around the world, but we're at great danger right now of fragmenting the reporting of non-financial metrics. There's a US initiative from the SEC, there's a Global Sustainability Board initiative, and the Europeans are setting off on their own path. And we need to go a little bit slower to go faster on consistent reporting of sustainability metrics. And that's how the flows that Larry and Dami are calling for will happen when you can measure it.
Oh, a global metric. That's what he's saying. A global metric. An ESG metric that everybody around the world is forced to adhere to. And then, of course, he goes on to say that if you are opposed to this, if you think that this is dangerous, if you think that it's socialist, if you think that it's communist, if you think that it's Marxist, if you know that it will have horrific, horrendous results, because we've seen this type of ideology and this control of economies control people and oppress people and lead to some of the most catastrophic oppression and starvation in countries around the world. All it takes is picking up a history book to see these things. If you protest this or object to this, well, you are dangerous.
Unilever fits into what Larry just said. You know, not every company lends itself as easily as some do to environmentally responsible production and distribution, but what do you want to say about that to other countries, companies in other countries?
You know, in 1939, George Orwell wrote that we have sunk to such depths that stating the obvious is the first responsibility of every person. And he was talking about a book on power written by Bertrand Russell, but it applies to today. Because stating the obvious that we have an emergency, we have a climate emergency, is becoming an unpopular thing to do. This anti-sustainability backlash, this anti-woke backlash, is incredibly dangerous for the world. And the first thing that Unilever will do is we will not back down on this agenda, despite these populist accusations.
So you are dangerous, is what he's saying. He wants to control you, but he thinks you're dangerous. There's a great combination. The funniest part, and I guess this is like a funny, not funny, the funniest part is he acts like he's taking the lead on something, but he then goes on to admit that the reason that Unilever is doing what they're doing is because BlackRock coerced them to do it.
Second thing I would say is there are many commitments out there, but not very many plans. And we were the first company in the world to voluntarily put our decarbonization plan to a shareholder vote. We were a bit worried about it. Some of our board thought that we were going too far. Some thought we might not be going far enough. And it squeaked through with 99.6% shareholder support, led, may I say, by BlackRock, who are, in my opinion, one of the finest commentators on sustainability and what companies should be doing.
That's the part that absolutely slayed me during this whole panel, is he takes all this credit, gives himself a pat on the back, pretends like he's standing up against people that are bad and dangerous people to the world if they are climate change deniers. But the real admission is that Unilever didn't do it on their own. They were coerced by BlackRock. And then, of course, we have the United Nations ESG czar, who was asked, you know, where are we going to find the money to do all of this? We're talking in the trillions of dollars. We have countries that are suffering from poverty, people living on $1 a day. Where do countries like that get the money to do this? And this is her answer.
About that, I think first, just like Alan said, first recognize it's a crisis. And, you know, just how we found, is it 14 or 17 trillion for COVID? The money must be there somewhere.
Oh, just like we found 17 trillion for COVID, the money must be there somewhere, she said. So what she means, let's translate that. She means that governments like the United States, if they are the issuer of currency, as the United States is, then she means that governments should just print the money. Congress shouldn't appropriate it. They shouldn't collect it via taxes. They should just print the money. They should make up the money. What she's espousing is modern monetary theory. You guys, we've talked about modern monetary theory on this show many times. I did a whole episode on it and how the Biden administration is tied very closely to a woman named Stephanie Kelton, who is one of the biggest propagators of modern monetary theory, which preaches that debt and deficit don't matter, that when governments that are currency issuers need money for their pet projects that the legislature doesn't want to be accountable to the voters for, then the executive branch of the federal government should just print that money. They should just print it. Debt and deficit doesn't matter at all. Just print the money and then use taxes just to try to counterbalance the inflation that will inevitably occur.